Welcome back to the channel, guys. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over. So it looks like something big might be happening at Sony Santa Monica Studio. A new job listing has popped up and it strongly suggests that a new God of War game could be in development. A job posting found on PlayStation's official careers page is for a senior combat designer. And when you read through the job description, it becomes pretty clear what kind of project that they're hinting at. The role involves taking characters from the very first stages of concept all the way to being fully realized in the game. That means working closely with teams in animation, level design, art, and even encounter design. Basically, the combat designer would help shape how battles feel, how enemies move, and how the entire combat system comes together. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The listing specifically asks for candidates with experience in third-person melee action RPGs. Not only that, but it even points out that they prefer applicants who already understand the combat mechanics from God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarök in 2022. So let's think about this. Why would they want someone familiar with God of War's exact systems unless they're planning to work on another God of War project? It's not an outright confirmation, of course, but when you put the pieces together, it's pretty hard to ignore that Sony Santa Monica are working on a brand new God of War project. And we've had multiple rumors and reports over the past 12 to 18 months that Santa Monica Studio are working on different versions of God of War. There have been reports that Santa Monica Studio might be working on a God of War spin-off, and supposedly this spin-off could take us back to Greece. Imagine that for a second, going back to Kratos' roots, revisiting those brutal mythologies and ancient settings that defined the earlier games. Would you want to see Kratos return back to Greece, or do you think his Norse saga should stand out on its own? We also know that there is a God of War Metroidvania game quite far along in development, which has already been delayed from a 2025 release to 2026. But that's not all the studio is working on. Cory Barlog, the creative mind behind some of the series' biggest moments, has already confirmed that Santa Monica Studio is also developing a brand new IP. He described it as technically ambitious, and on top of that, there are several reports of multiple unannounced projects also in the works. So at the very least, it means Santa Monica Studio is not slowing down. Whether it's another chapter in Kratos' journey, a spin-off set in Greece, or something completely new, fans can expect more big things from Santa Monica Studio in the future. The real question is, which project are you most excited to see? Another God of War game or something completely new? Let me know in the comments and let's move on. So from a potential new God of War game to a brand new dark AAA single player experience. This is coming from Firesprite Studio, a UK-based developer under the PlayStation banner. Seems to be quietly working on a pretty big thing right now. A new job listing from the studio hints at a mysterious project described as a dark, story-driven, next-generation narrative adventure. That's quite a mouthful, but let's break that down and see what it could mean. The role they are hiring for is a principal gameplay animator. In plain terms, that's someone who helps bring characters to life through movement and performance. And the listing makes it clear that whoever gets the job will play a major role in shaping the game's experience. They'll be working with other teams to make sure animations don't just look smooth, but also feel natural, believable, and most importantly, emotional. According to the description, Firesprite is aiming for AAA ambitions. That means big budgets, cutting-edge technology, motion capture, detailed and ambitious voice acting, cinematic action sequences, and the kind of production value you'd expect normally from the biggest names in the gaming industry. They want players to feel immersed, not just in the world, but in the characters themselves. Imagine not only watching a character's story unfold, but also feeling their emotions through every subtle gesture, every moment, every small detail. Isn't that the kind of immersion modern games should be striving for? And here's where things get even more intriguing. The job listing describes this game as dark. That's not a word you see tossed around lightly in official postings, and it's not the first time we've heard it associated with the studio's next game. Reports from last year also mentioned that Firesprite was working on a dark-themed project, possibly connected to an existing horror franchise. Could this be tied to something fans already know about? Or are we looking at a completely new IP with horror at its core? And to add some context, Firesprite has a pretty interesting history. The studio was founded back in 2000 2012 by former members of Sony's Liverpool studio, the team behind the legendary Wipeout series. For years, Firesprite worked closely with Sony, but it wasn't until September 2021 that PlayStation officially acquired them as a first-party developer. Their first major release under Sony's wing was Horizon Call of the Mountain for PlayStation VR 2, which showed that they're not afraid to tackle ambitious projects. So when they say this new title is pushing narrative and character animation into groundbreaking territory, it's not just a throwaway line. It suggests they're trying to make a statement, maybe even redefine what narrative-driven games can be on next-generation hardware. And here's a question for you guys. What comes to mind when you hear the phrase dark story-driven adventure? Do you think of survival horror, a psychological thriller, or maybe something entirely unexpected? Do you think of games like Alan Wake, Silent Hill, Until Dawn, and Resident Evil? What if Sony could develop their own series of horror or psychological thriller games? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, we're absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to dark-themed games right now. There is so much choice. And if this is the direction Firesprite's new game is going down, then there's a lot of competition. And the bar has already been set with games like Dead Space Remake, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Alan Wake 2, and with upcoming games like Chronos The New Dawn, Ill, and Resident Evil Requiem. There's a whole lot of games here and a lot of competition. Whatever this new Firesprite game is going to be, the standard has to be exceptionally high. Whatever the case, it's clear that Firesprite is aiming high. Between their past collaborations with Sony, their recent first-party project, and now this mysterious dark adventure, the studio seems poised to play a much bigger role in PlayStation's future lineup. The only thing left now is to wait and see exactly what this project turns out to be. Let me know what you think or hope this new dark project could be in the comments down below, and let's move on. Now, when we think about the future of gaming, it's almost impossible not to picture what the next consoles will bring. The PlayStation 6 and the next box are already being whispered about, and while they're still a few years away, some early details are starting to paint a picture of where things are headed. Now, one of the big talking points is ray tracing. The technology which makes lighting, reflections, and shadows in games look far more realistic is going to get even better and better. It's what allows a window to reflect the world around it, or for a single beam of light to cast shadows that change as you move. On PC, it's phenomenal, especially if you have a powerful PC. It's already being pushed heavily by Nvidia's RTX graphics cards, but on consoles, it's still very much in its early stages. Now, according to tech insiders, both the PlayStation 6 and the next box are expected to feature significant upgrades to ray tracing performance. In fact, leaks suggest these new systems could deliver ray tracing that's many times stronger than what we have right now on the current generation consoles. Some of the technology being discussed sounds pretty technical. Things like faster matrix math, improved cache systems, and dedicated hardware just for managing ray tracing calculations. To most players, those terms don't mean much, but the takeaway is simple. Games will look much better, lighting will feel more natural, and the gap between real-world visuals and in-game graphics will shrink even further. But there is a catch. Even with all these advancements, experts say true, uncompromised ray tracing, the kind where everything in the game world is rendered with perfect film-like accuracy, is still a long way off. We're talking decades, maybe even 20 years before it's truly standard. That raises a question: are we chasing perfection, or is good enough for now? Now, it's not just ray tracing that's getting the attention. Reports suggest the PlayStation 6 could deliver somewhere between 5 to 10 times the performance of today's PlayStation 5. But an interesting detail to consider is that regular rendering performance, what we call rasterization, might only improve by about 2 to 3 times. Some people might see that as underwhelming, but think about it. Even at that level, these new systems should easily handle 4K resolution at 120 frames per second, and that might be enough for most people. That means smooth, sharp gameplay that feels almost seamless. And another factor we cannot ignore is cost. With prices across the gaming industry rising from hardware to accessories and even game prices, it's worth asking, how much will these new consoles end up costing at launch with all these new bells and whistles? It's a huge factor Sony and Microsoft will have to factor in. Will players be willing to pay more for that leap in performance, or will Sony and Microsoft try to keep things as affordable as possible? What's clear is that both companies know ray tracing is part of the future for next generation consoles. However, do not underestimate the role AI technology will also play in how games are developed and how they run on next generation consoles. The console manufacturers are investing heavily to make it a bigger part of our everyday gaming experience. It won't be perfect yet, but it's going to be a massive step forward on these new systems. And it's not the first time reports and rumors have surfaced about the next PlayStation PlayStation console being up to 10 times the performance levels of the current PlayStation 5. I guess as we get closer and closer to whenever the PlayStation 6 is going to launch, we'll get more snippets of information that surface about its performance and its capabilities. The big question, I suppose, for most gamers is, why would I want to buy the PlayStation 6? What is going to make me buy the PlayStation 6? Why should I move forward? I'm not talking about tech enthusiasts, early adopters, or people who have gaming YouTube and social media channels. I'm talking about people that are still gaming on PlayStation 4, or those that are quite happy to continue on the PlayStation 5 regardless of whenever the PS6 comes out. What's going to make people go from their current platform to buying a PlayStation 6 when that comes out? Have a think about it and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, because that has seen huge success both commercially and critically. Critics loved it, players couldn't get enough of it, and the sales clearly reflect that level of excitement. So it shouldn't be a surprise that the studio has already been thinking about expanding that universe. But an important detail that not everyone knows is that while many people casually refer to the game as Expedition 33, the actual franchise is called Clair Obscur. Expedition 33 is just one story within that larger universe. The game's director, Guillaume Brochet, recently spoke in an interview and clarified a lot about the future. And according to him, more games are on the way for the franchise. He didn't give many specifics, but he made it clear that Clair Obscur's universe isn't quite finished yet. He goes on to say that Clair Obscur is the franchise name. Expedition 33 is one of the stories that we want to tell in this franchise. Exactly what it will look like and what the concept will be is still too early to announce. But what is sure is that this is not the end of the Clair Obscur franchise. That means there's a lot of possibilities for this franchise moving forward. Will the next game continue the story of Expedition 33, or will they take a more anthology-like approach, similar to the Final Fantasy series, where each title is essentially a new story but in the same universe? Although there are some reoccurring themes and mechanics in the series, so if you want a deeper understanding of this, then you could play the games in some sort of order. The potential for exploring new expeditions, new characters, and new mysteries within the Clair Obscur world is huge. Could we revisit previous expeditions from a new perspective, or dive into entirely new locations and stories? The studio hasn't said yet, but the possibilities are wide open. Considering how successful Expedition 33 has been, both commercially and critically, it's a safe bet to assume that Sandfall Interactive will continue to invest in this franchise, and as players we get to sit back and imagine what's next. Will it be a continuation of familiar stories, or a completely fresh take that expands the universe in unexpected ways? Let me ask you a question, guys. How did you find Expedition 33? I'm not really a fan of turn-based games, so I've got a confession. I've not really played it yet. I've heard great things about the game, I've read great reports about the game, and many people on the channel have let me know how good this game is. So it is on my radar, and I will probably pick it up at some point. I am looking forward to giving it a try and seeing for myself what all the fuss is about. I'm told the soundtrack, by the way, to the game is absolutely fantastic too. So let me know your comments on Expedition 33 or Clair Obscur, and let's move on to some excellent news for No Man's Sky, because it's been a while since the game launched and it's come a long way from a small procedurally generated universe to one of the most expansive and constantly evolving space games out there. Hello Games has steadily been adding content that surprises and excites players. Their latest update, called Voyagers, is another huge step forward, especially for PlayStation 5 Pro owners and if you own a PlayStation VR 2. The most noticeable change comes through the PlayStation 5 Pro's PSSR technology. Now, when the PlayStation 5 Pro launched, it wasn't clear whether PSSR support was available for the VR headset. However, what we can say now is that PlayStation VR 2 is supported with PSSR, and that's demonstrated by the release, or the update rather, of No Man's Sky, which now fully supports PSSR in VR mode. Hello Games says they worked closely with Sony for over a year to make this happen. By combining eye-tracked, foveated rendering with PSSR, the game now delivers ultra-high definition visuals and incredible detail. For PS5 Pro VR players, this is a massive leap in immersion. Imagine looking around a planet and seeing every detail crisp and clear as if it were right in front of you. But the visuals are just the beginning here, because the brand new free update called Voyagers also introduces a brand new ship type called Corvettes. Unlike the standard procedurally generated ships you've flown before, Corvettes are massive, fully customizable vessels. Think of them as your own mobile base in space. You can add rooms for sleeping, a war room, a mission radar, and more. Weapons, decorations, animations, and functionality are all up to you. And the part that really stands out is you can actually walk around your Corvette mid-flight. You can step out for zero-gravity spacewalks or move through the ship with your crew in multiplayer. It's not just a ship, it's a living, breathing environment that you and your friends can inhabit. And you can unlock the Corvettes a little bit into the game, but active players can get access quickly. There's even a new Corvette-focused expedition that introduces these ships to everybody, giving all players a chance to explore and customize them. Hello Games founder Sean Murray called this update a huge undertaking. He explained that almost every part of the game had to be reworked to make Corvettes possible, from multiplayer crew interactions to editing your ship in real time while flying at warp speed towards a planet being generated as you approach it. The technical challenges were immense. Behind the scenes, the game is doing incredible things that are truly mind-blowing. The appeal of these ships is obvious. Who wouldn't want their own version of the Millennium Falcon? A spacefaring base you can personalize, explore, and take on new adventures with friends. So what do you think, guys? Are Corvettes going to change how you play No Man's Sky? Or are you more excited about the visual upgrades thanks to PSSR? Either way, the Voyager's update shows just how much Halo Games continues to push the boundaries of what a living multiplayer universe can be. Guys, let me know your thoughts on the articles discussed in the video today. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.